beliefs inform actions, and that is going to either help or hurt people at the end of the day. So I'm glad that we're having these conversations, and I'm quite proud that we have the privilege to do what we do. So on that note, I'd like to go to the next clip here, last one that we're going to talk about tonight.
Are you looking for something spiritual? Because most people, they don't go on live streams doing stuff like that.
Right. I know. Why is he doing this? What's his motivations?
Yeah, so
there's a lot of things there, and I'm losing my train of thought. Can you repeat it again?
So, like,
besides the why are you doing this?
It sounds to me that you're still spiritually searching for something.
Okay. I'm not entirely convinced that spiritual things even exist. But if they do, I want to know about it.
Okay.
But I can't base a belief on faith. I wouldn't want, if I discovered I was basing any belief on faith, whether there was life on Mars, or that there wasn't life on Mars, or that I'm the cutest guy on this campus, or whatever. If I discovered that I was using faith for anything, personally, my confidence would drop from the 100 to probably the 3%. Because I recognize that people are using that method to get to all different kind of beliefs, which is why I want to encourage you to maybe think about what instance could possibly ever exist where I can use faith and not conclude that it was true.
Kind of a poorly worded question there at the end, but did I confuse you with that question? I kind of confused myself.
I'm just more blown away at just like I was so defensive. Like,
really?
Oh, you could tell. You could just so tell.
I was gonna say, you started getting thoughtful. You had your hand at your chin, and you were like trying to hide. You were trying to hide it. You had it just underneath, and then you put your hands together in front of you. And I think that's probably what you're feeling there.
I never had a conversation like that before. I think that's true for a lot of people who have like SE conversations, right? Like nobody's really been asked in such an eloquent and thoughtful way about their beliefs, because like we do live in a culture that kind of just says like, oh, I believe in God. Be like, oh, good for you. Like we kind of blasé accept some of these things sometimes. And I don't think, and nobody that I had ever had a conversation with on campus as, doing that evangelical work, ever talked to me like you did that day, because the people that would probably be able to do that may not want to talk to me in the first place, right? Because I'm a guy with the Bible going around on campus, but also the ones that I am talking to are probably just going to be more receptive to what I have to say, in general, if they're even willing to have that conversation in the first place. And so that's another reason too, by the way, why I decided to talk to you for as long as I did. One, because it was a genuinely interesting conversation, but also like my understanding was if we're going to like talk to people, like if this thing is real, then we should be able to hold up to, the questions that were asked and stuff. And we should be able to hold up to scrutiny there. And so I found it strange that other people didn't want to talk to you at the time, because there were people that knew about you and didn't want to talk to you. But it was like, well, hey, if we're doing this whole evangelism thing, aren't we supposed to be talking to everybody? I guess they didn't think that you were a good actor in that sense. And so I think maybe that's where some of that wariness came from. But I don't know. Like, it's like, it's
I think I talked to, there were several students from religious groups on campus that I would talk to. I don't know if they were there. You were part of, we probably don't even need to mention their name, but you were one of many that I've talked to. And I don't know if I ever really got the sense until later that people were being advised to not talk to me or warning people about me. That was kind of new. I didn't really get that impression until a little bit later. But I guess I liked that you wanted to know what my motivations were. And that's often a thing that we see people advising us to do lately. Like, or if I'm going to give a talk, almost always I get the question, why do you do this?
Yeah.
So I think it's probably important for anyone that's practicing this technique with a theist or anyone else, regardless of what topic you're doing, be prepared to explain why you're interested in their position and why you're taking the time to question a person in that way. Be prepared to do that, because I think you need to be honest with people and reveal what's motivating you to go out there and strap on a camera and flag people down and have those talks? I thought it was a fair question, but I do remember, it may not have been during this conversation, but when I'm asked that question, I'm always a little leery, because it's at the back of my mind. How are they going to respond to what I'm going to tell them? And is it going to close them down? Is it going to cause them to be defensive? Will they complain to the university and kick me off? All that stuff is going through my mind.
Yeah.
It's challenging.
Yeah, it is hard, because I remember getting into it and thinking, man, what a great way. The original book is a manual for creating atheists.
Yeah.
And, how do we overcome that in terms of, really, it's a way of promoting critical thinking. And, for my foundation, I think about a society which reflects on its own beliefs on an ongoing basis. For instance, if there is good evidence for God, I would love to discover it and then share that. Yeah. Right. But until then, I want to make sure that I'm evaluating my beliefs on an ongoing basis and being honestly willing to examine evidence or adjust my beliefs, and then modeling that and encouraging others to do the same. It's the single most important thing I think everybody can do in their capacity, wherever they are. And it's the way that beliefs and mindsets get spread. It's by sharing it and helping others get into it. It's creating communities, which, Anthony, oh my gosh, the communities that you've created, thousands of people joining. To
be clear, I don't think I started any of those.
Oh,
with the exception of maybe a couple offshoot Facebook groups. Those groups were there, or other people created them. I didn't start the SE Reddit. I didn't start the study group on Facebook or the Discord server, or other people who were watching this stuff or reading the books or stumbling across the method got off their asses and did it. They created communities. Now, maybe the videos funneled people. Like, that was nice to have somebody, infrastructure to direct people to, especially people that I would interview. like if those groups were there back then, there may have been one or two with 500 people, but not to the point where I would even thought about advising Dan to go check that group out after that conversation. Yeah. So the idea that those even, like, having those there now is great, because you touched on something. You said, like, it's so important that we do these kind of conversations, and I totally agree. However, you have to keep in the back of your mind how potentially destructive it can be to a person and their views and their lifestyle and the friends that they have in college and their families. Yep. So that was, when you have enough conversations with people and they reach out to you and they start sharing the difficulties that they are now encountering because of those conversations that you've had, that's when it really starts dawning on you, like, okay, we need to be really careful about this approach and make sure that we're baking in an ethical spin on this whole thing.
Yep.
You're wielding a very sharp sword. Like, you can't be reckless with it. Having those communities out there, having groups like the ACA or Recovering from Religion, those are all great things to have as a practitioner and somebody like trying to promote this. It makes me more comfortable promoting it when I know that there's all that other infrastructure out there to catch people.
Yeah, I walked into college as a Christian. I walked out of college as an atheist, and that had consequences on my mental health, on my social health. I don't hang out with the same group of people that I used to anymore, and everybody around me that knew about this, because eventually, this conversation and this story got out, that just changed everything for me. And of course, I might be an exception to that because I was public about, me coming out and saying, oh, this is how I am now. But, like, I'm not the only person that's had their mind changed from SE conversations. And you can find in lots of these Facebook groups and stuff that we're talking about that other people have definitely changed their minds on this stuff. And when you asked me, we didn't have the clip of this, if I was 100% confident in my beliefs, and I said yes, or you asked me how confident I was on a scale from 1 to 100, and I said 100%, and it turns out I wasn't. And that has consequences when you figure that out too. So I do try to think about this, because it's not just well, you're wrong and here's why, bye, see you later, have fun with your life. It's like, what do you do now? Because there wasn't a group there was a group at that particular campus, but, like, I didn't know the ins and outs of these kinds of communities. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know who to trust, to be honest with you.
And they can be harsh. Like, if you're going in and you're just questioning, sometimes the college groups, you know, depending on who's in there and what kind of frame of mind they are, they can be pretty, you know, cold and prickly potentially. And so you don't know if you're going to feel comfortable there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I didn't identify with these people either. I mean, I grew up my whole life as a Christian. Suddenly I'm hanging out with these atheists, and atheists particularly have a lot of different political values than most of a lot of Christians do, right? Like that's a shock to the system too. And they each to adopt those beliefs, those take separate kind of deconstructions that I was all kind of experiencing through college, as a lot of people do during that time of their lives. But it was a shock to the system in the sense that I had to change everything, not just a couple beliefs here and there, but really just the way I thought about how I was going to live the rest of my life. And I wish people talked about that more when we have these conversations, because
that's what's so powerful. That's what's so powerful about your story, is that we, you know, we saw you as a Christian, we see you now as an atheist and an activist at that. And it's, I think it's good for people to see that. But I never got the sense that you sugarcoated the difficulties that came with it. Like this really, I think, you know, it wasn't that easy for you, you know, and I think at the expense of you, to a certain extent, we are benefiting from watching your journey out. And that was something, you know, I always thought like, hey, it could be kind of neat to like encounter somebody and we can actually see how they went end to end. And in a sense, we're kind of getting that with you. Now it's of course one visual data point. There's lots of other people out there that I've talked to who have made similar journeys out, but it personalizes SE, which is great because I think SE is such a personal approach. So it's just been really nice to, like it was really cool. Like I the very start of that video, like I think I asked somebody, can you stop? And they said no. And then I asked you and you said yes. If that other person had just said yes, I would have been busy interviewing them. And it was nice how that worked out.
And here we are. And to that point, like every conversation we have with people matters, right? Even just the random Twitter fights people get into and stuff like, that stuff's probably going to be less consequential than maybe in-person conversations in general, right? But you still never know. I don't think, Anthony, you thought that you would ever have a conversation with me like this, or even ever see me again.
Oh, like this? No. And then like, I mean, you reached out 2 years later, we met again, we did an interview, and then we went out to lunch. And I think you said like, you know, what did you say? Something like, was that really more for me or more for your audience? I'm like, well, honestly, it was really more for the audience to see this kind of approach. But you know, I'm tickled that that you're handling it so maturely, you know, and you're really kind of laying yourself out there, and everyone's watching. You know, you're not under a microscope, I don't think. I hope you don't feel that way. But it's been a really good. It's been good for SE to see that journey out. It's. That lunch was also interesting. I mean, it was good. It was neat to like talk to somebody. And then you were like, but now I want to get into activism. I want to do something about it. Like you had this energy too, and you were talking about like, you know, maybe I can do something with the ACA or answer phones. I'm like, oh, that'd be good. I can introduce you to a few people. But then I was like, okay, well, how much involvement do I want to get in here? I don't want to like mold somebody to be this activist. It's like, you know, Dan, you can reach out to me if you need me, but just, you know, go do your thing. I'll try to help you if I can. It was kind of tough to be honest. Like, what do I do with this guy? kind of was going through my mind.
I don't know.
It's been incredible.
I figured it out, I guess, but
You figured it out.
Part of the reason why I even do this is I genuinely don't want anybody to go through what I had to go through in just the loneliness and just the like the sense of shame that I felt going through all that. I mean, just doubting a sincerely held belief that I had for the entirety of my life is one of the, I mean, truly one of the hardest things I've ever had to do. And I imagine it's going to be harder for other people. And people are going through this right now. I imagine this year people have deconstructed a lot of their beliefs about how they feel about society and politics and just probably maybe their own faith in things. I don't know. But my thing now is like, how do we handle those conversations from here? How do we help people, you know, from going down lonely roads where they don't have to feel alone, where they don't have to be the only one thinking about these things? I didn't know about the ACA. I didn't know about other organizations doing their thing. Because it wasn't presented to me as an option. And I want to try to give people those options now, because man, it sucked. It was really bad for a while, but hey, started from the bottom.
And there's even more options today too.
Yeah.
Like look at what Ben's doing on freaking TikTok. He's reaching a lot of people.
TikToking it up.
Younger people, and he's presenting these complicated concepts very quickly with music, and he's entertaining. It's awesome. I love seeing it.
Yeah. Well, we have some calls that we should probably get to, guys. I'm really glad that we got to do that. You guys didn't see those that weren't on the actual rendezvous call, but the first clip, I couldn't even look at the camera. I can't even look at this right now. It's so weird for me, but I'm really glad we had this conversation. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. And so, yeah, those of you guys who've ever wondered about my story, how I even started doing this, that's it right here. We got to talk about it, and I'm really glad we did this, boys. Thanks so much for joining me for that bit. But are you guys ready to talk to some callers now for the rest of the time we got?
Yeah, let's do it. Cool.
Well, before we get to the calls, I have something I've got to do, which is thanking the patron of the week. That's right, folks. Every single week, I like to thank a special patron that donates to patreon.com/truthwanted. And this week's patron is Jonathan Hull. Thank you, Jonathan Hull, for donating to Truth Wanted. All of the money that gets donated on that Patreon goes towards the ACA and help make this show. There's a lot of costs that go into making shows like this, in terms of equipment, in terms of paying the bills for a building that we can't currently really go into right now because of, pandemic and stuff. So yeah, it really helps when you guys donate and it shows support. I'm a volunteer at the ACA. I don't personally receive that, and all the volunteers don't either. It really just goes towards making this stuff even better. So thank you guys so much for doing that. Now, I think it's time we get to some calls.